What's going on, Jerome's? I'm actually kind of liking these garage raw real rants because I can just talk off the cuff about things. And the comment that we've been getting a lot when we talked about we're still the pontificator of purple positivity, and we just want the Vikings to win a game on Sunday for Grandma Edna and all that stuff. And a lot of people chime in, blah blah blah. What about the draft pick? What about da da da? What about drafting higher? What about all this stuff? And some people, it runs the gamut, right? Because I feel like people are just trying to, we all want the same thing. We all want this team to be successful long term. We just have different ways of going about it. And the thing I don't like about it is, the people who want to tank, they're very smug and arrogant about it. And that's coming from a guy who's smug and arrogant. Calling a spade a spade. But the whole thing about, or the pot calling the kettle black. There you go, different analogy. But the whole thing is like, well, I want my team to have a good quarterback. So obviously that means we must be at the top of the draft. We've been over the historical hit rate of quarterbacks taken at one, the first quarterback taken in the class. It's not ideal. And also, hey, Caleb Williams is a can't miss prospect. I'm a big quasi USC fan, and I understand what he can bring to the table. But the chances that he busts, they're not zero. And also, this class is so deep. This class is replete with quarterbacks of the future, so you don't need to be up at the top. This is not a one or two quarterback class. This is a 5, 6, 7 at least quarterback class. So you don't need to sweat it there. And also, the whole thing about, well, I don't like being in purgatory. I don't like being this team being 9-8 and 8-9 and 1-0 in the playoffs. What does that have to do with the height of the draft pick? What does that have to do with how high the draft pick is? Again, looking back historically, in the last 30 years, I mean, the Giants, since they won the Super Bowl in 2011, how has all those high draft picks worked out? How about the Bengals in the 90s? How about the Browns as of late? How about the Lions before they started getting good this year? And it's not necessarily because of all the high draft picks. It's because they started hitting on some of their mid-round picks. I mean, Jonah Jackson's a third rounder. So the whole thing is, it's not where you draft. It's hitting on your draft picks and also having the infrastructure in-house, coaching development, training staff, having these players maximize their potential. And I don't know if the Vikings have had that. And it's not just Kwesi. It goes back to the Spielman years as well, where there's so many missed draft picks. And hey, it doesn't matter where you draft. If you're missing on your picks consistently and your players aren't developing, whether the coaches don't fit them in their scheme, whether the coaches are too obtuse to change things up, if the position coaches can't get the most out of the players, that's a problem. And we talked about the Browns. Since the Browns came back into the league, I don't have this off the top of my head, but they've had the number one overall pick 4 times. So 25 drafts, they've had the number one pick 4 times. Myles Garrett, stud. Tim Couch, bust. Baker Mayfield, bust. Although he's doing better in Tampa now, as well as Courtney Brown, sort of whatever there. And again, it's not about where you draft, because the Browns have had like 16 top 12 picks in the last 25 years. And so you're thinking that, with all that draft capital, because the higher the draft pick, the better the player. That's how it always works. No, you think that they would have won a dozen Super Bowls so far. So again, I understand the frustration of going 9-8 and playoffs and losing the playoffs, and I understand the frustration of that over and over and over and over again. But you know how many fan bases would just kill for a playoff appearance? A lot of them, a lot of them. And the whole thing about it is losing has a lot of momentum, and it really covers up the entire culture. And it's bad juju, it's bad mojo, it's bad everything, man. And again, just because you have a higher draft pick does not guarantee that that player will work out. I mean, just go back and look through the drafts. Like, how many times has a talented player fell into the right situation? He's properly developed. He gets an opportunity and he becomes a star. Whereas if he would have landed in any other team in the league, he would have been a bust. And that's a little bit of the roll of the dice. But the Vikings, frankly, instead of worrying about where they draft, they need to worry about, hey, we need better player development. Hey, we need better scouting assessment so that the players that we do take have a better chance of working out for what they want us to do. We want them to do in our scheme. That whole thing. Like, because other than that, it just really doesn't matter. Like, Cleveland's been dysfunctional for so many years, so all those draft picks were wasted. And maybe if they would have ended up with a different and better team, it would have worked out. But the thing we bring up all the time is that, hey, the Patriots during the Super Bowl run. Yes, they had Tom Brady, but yes, they were hitting on draft picks and free agents as well. Or you look at the Ravens under Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta. They're consistently hitting at the back end of the first round. If they even take a first round pick, oftentimes they trade out. So constantly they are hitting on day 2, day 3 picks, guys who become starters and contributors. That's important. You look at the Eagles and Howie. He's been fantastic. John Lynch, even though he's had some high-profile misses with Trey Lance and Solomon Thomas, overall, they have been very good at hitting on and developing their players, especially day 2, day 3. I mean, look at frickin' Brock Purdy, right? And that's the whole thing. Where, again, I think people are too fixated on the thing that's right in front of them. It's like, what's the point of drafting 16 or 18 when you can draft 8 if they lose a handful of games? I'm just saying it does not matter. It doesn't matter until they get that scouting department right, until they get the right coaching staff, until this becomes a place where, hey, no matter where you are in the first round, you could be number 1, you could be number 32. You come to Minnesota, you're going to have a chance to develop and become a star. Same thing with day 2, day 3 UDFA guys, right? That has to come first before the height of the draft pick, even though obviously, if they end up with Caleb Williams, I'm pretty good to go. But hey, you look at Michael Penix Jr., you look at J.J. McCarthy, you look at Quinn Ewers, you look at Shedeur Sanders, you look at Drake May, you look at all these other fantastic quarterbacks in the class. It doesn't matter how high you draft. Because, hey, you can land Caleb Williams at 1. If he lands in a dysfunctional franchise, he's going to bust. Or if Caleb Williams or a quarterback, say, lands at a team at 10 or in the mid rounds or whatever. And also you can trade up, by the way. And he lands in a great spot where he's going to get developed. He's got a much better chance. And that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Because a lot of the times, the teams up at the top of the draft are dysfunctional to begin with. And that leads into why top picks can have a high bust rate. Because they land in a horrible franchise with either a new coach or a poor coaching staff or poor ownership or a bad GM or a new GM. And it doesn't work out. And they're just deficient of talent. That's what happens, man. So instead of focusing on, hey, the Vikings need a higher draft pick because that's directly correlated to success. No, the Vikings need to become an incubator of talent and success. And Kwesi can't make any excuses. 2022's draft was a wash. 2023, I mean, Addison, yeah, sure, yes. Pace Jr., UDFA, yes. But no, that's the whole thing. The Vikings do have to take a page out of the playbook of the Ravens, of the Eagles, of the Niners, of the Patriots for the last couple of years. And then go from there, man. Again, you draft where you draft. That's all. That's all, baby. Anyways, that's it. Blah.